Welcome back to the channel, you curd nerds. I know it's a slightly different vibe here today, but I didn't move. This is just a hotel. I'm actually down in Vegas and going to be teaching some students in the full motion A320 sim. But that's not what this video is about, so make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you get notified when those full motion sim videos do come out. But what we're doing today is yet another mock check ride. And this one's different. This one's a little different. It's still private pilot, but the big difference is this student took 3 years. Or is it 3 years? I don't know. 3 years to get their private pilot certificate, or at least to get to this point in their training, which is why when people ask me, hey, I'm at 60 hours, or hey, I'm at 50 hours, or hey, I'm at 100 hours, and I still haven't taken my check ride, what's wrong with me? Not a goddamn thing. There's not a goddamn thing wrong with you. I'm going to let you in on a little secret real quick. How many hours do you think it took me, the person you're going to look for advice on your training? How long do you think it took me to get my private pilot certificate? I didn't take my check ride until I was at 117 hours. 117. Now, I've had students get their private pilot certificate done in 35 hours, given the 141 requirement of 35 hours. I've also had students take years and hundreds of hours. It doesn't matter. As long as you get the appropriate training and you end up enjoying it, you have the money, and you end up a safe pilot. That's the most important one right there. You end up a safe pilot. So don't let your buddies saying, oh, I got mine in 40, oh, I got mine in 50. I can't believe y'all didn't go to a 141 school and get it done in 35. Don't let them get to you, all right? This student, out of their 3 years of training, knows damn near everything. I think they got one question wrong on the entire mock check ride. They did amazing. So just because it's taking you a little bit longer doesn't mean you're doing worse. You're probably just absorbing the information more. So let's get into it.
Are you okay with us recording this to be used on, any and all social media platforms that come out?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I sent one too. Okay, if you see it.
Oh, yeah. You can record it locally on your end as well. That's not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure I don't need anything up here. No, I don't need that up. All right. So how's your day going?
Oh, I just came from a flight, a pre-check ride flight, in a plane. I flew twice just for you to know, it's been 3 years since I started this whole thing. There was a period of a little over 6 months that I quit, flying because of work and all that. So it's kind of like off and on to me, but overall I'm doing like maybe 2 to 3 flights. And if I got lucky, a month. So not exactly too much flying time. I got about a little over 120 hours in them 3 years. But I decided to push it now to the check ride point because it's getting, to the point where either it's going to go or not going to go. I can't just drop all this money in investment and just say, fuck it, I'm
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of both. And, whatever comes out of it is what, we'll take it to the next step. But definitely worth investing for, to finish it. That's for sure. And we'll see. We'll take it one step at a time.
Yeah, I mean, mock check rides are definitely a great way to ensure that you are prepared. And don't worry about it taking 3 years or 120 hours. I'm here at this point, and it took me 117 to get my private pilot.
Okay.
So don't be too concerned. I know a lot of students, they're like, oh, I'm at 100 hours, I'm at 80 hours, or what have you. Should I just give up now? And it's like, no, don't. I'm sitting here right in front of you trying to make sure you're ready, and it took me 117. So
Okay.
believe me,
Listen, if you put those things in perspective, then, time is going to be different, with every person. Some can do it in 3 months. Some I heard take 2. I just actually saw a guy who actually did 20 years without flying. Then he came back to it. 25 years, I'm sorry. And I think it's something like that. So,
I've had students accomplish private pilot in 30 days, and I've had students accomplish private pilot in 2 years.
And if I got you right, you're doing ATPs, right? Like you're a CFI for ATPs?
So I'm doing the ATP CTP course. We're waiting on the Federal Aviation Administration to come observe our A320 ATP course. For me to start doing ATP type ratings in the 320. So right now, no, I'm not teaching in the 320 for type ratings. I'm teaching in the 320 for the ATP CTP course, which is kind of that like gap fill between small props up to jets. And we're just waiting on the FAA to have enough money to come observe our course. Like we already have a full course, and we're just waiting for the FAA to approve it.
Well, all the best of luck, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. All right, so let's get right into this. What I like to start with is just how a DPE is going to administer a check ride, right? If you've seen the videos on YouTube, it's the same thing every time, right? They're going to ask for all your certificates, your documents, your logbook, right? So they're going to ask for your student pilot certificate. They're going to ask for your medical certificate. They're going to ask for a government issued photo ID, and they're going to ask for your logbook. If you want to make sure that your logbook has all the appropriate endorsements, the advisory circular 6165H back in the appendix, you're going to look for private pilot, and you're just going to make sure you've got all the appropriate endorsements. Make sure that, since you have been doing this for a little while, a lot of instructors, they'll just fill out the endorsement that's like pre-printed in the back of the logbook. And sometimes those are dated, right? They're not accurate anymore. Okay. Right. Just make sure that those endorsements are correct. All right.
Yeah, I actually got over all of my endorsements because my check ride was on supposed to be March 12th and it got pushed because of work and stuff. And now they're talking April 2nd. So pretty much right around the corner. So that's why I did this flight this morning to see what's going on, where I'm at and all that. But I'm definitely, looking to get it done in the next, hopefully in the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks if possible. So yes, I got all my stuff in order. I'm pretty much on top of it.
Awesome. Just make sure, I do see that you got glasses. It's always a good thing to just have an extra spare set when you go do your check ride, right? Beyond that, there's going to be 3 outcomes to every check ride, right? You got satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and incomplete. Satisfactory, that's what everybody wants to hear. Satisfactory means that you're consistently within the standards. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't fall outside the standards, right? It's not, oh, I dropped five knots too low or 5 feet too low. I all of a sudden failed my check ride. Same thing on the oral portion and the knowledge portion. The expectation isn't that you know the answer to every question we ask. A lot of DPEs, what they're going to do is they're going to ask a question, and that one question is the pass for that portion. But then they're going to keep asking questions to see how far the knowledge goes. And some people get flustered by that because they're like, God damn, I thought I knew this. Why do we keep asking more questions on this? Okay. Yeah. So don't let that get you flustered. The DPE is just trying to see where the end of the knowledge is. All right.
Okay.
Then we've got unsatisfactory. That's the thing that nobody wants to hear. Consistently outside of the standards. You have to look up every answer. Basic safety stuff is, there's big gaps in knowledge for basic safety stuff. And then things like the examiner has to take control of the aircraft to prevent damage, death, dismemberment, etc.
Definitely.
Or the violation of a federal regulation.
Okay.
Right. So if you're about to land on a taxiway and they got to take control. Right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Nothing can save you from that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to recover from that. Be like, oh, I was just testing you. No. But then we've got incomplete, right? Incomplete is an option. Incomplete is due to weather, time, safety of flight, anything that's on like the I'm safe checklist. If you really want to look at it, I believe the reg is 6143 Bravo that has the list of every reason that would be appropriate for an incomplete. Oh shit, I'm not prepared is not, an appropriate response.
Yep, heard that before.
But just, make sure that if you are on a check ride, you're nauseous, you don't feel good, you didn't sleep the night before, you're thirsty, right? These are all normal things. If you need to incomplete, if you need to put a pause, let's go get some water. Let's take a break. Some check rides, some DPEs, they drag them things out. My oral for instrument was 9 hours.
Okay.
I took some breaks.
Wow.
Okay.
I've heard some things. Yeah. I'm with you.
So last question DP is going to ask, just to kind of like, this is a cover their ass kind of question. Have you read the Airman Certification Standards and you understand the standards that you're being held to?
Yes.
right? You saying yes to that, there's no longer the excuse of I didn't know that that was going to be checked.
Yep, I agree
Right.
with you.
So any questions?
No, let's get on with it.
All right, sounds good. So we get into systems right off the bat, just because it's pretty straightforward. If you don't understand the aircraft systems, it's going to be the rest of the check ride's not going to go that well. So talk to me about the engine in this thing. What is it?
So the engine is, and I don't know if I sent you the STC for that or the 337 for that, but they've swapped the engine from an Lycoming 0320 to a Lycoming 0360.
Okay.
So the engine has been replaced, and I know there's, I've seen the 337s in the logbooks to show the swap of that engine with the manufacturer, not the manufacturer, I'm sorry, the factory where they installed it that had all the paperwork attached to the logbook. I've seen that.
Okay.
I know
So
it's there, and I know, yeah, and it's horizontal. It's it's a Lycoming 0360, 4-cylinder, air cooled, direct drive or direct driven, carbureted, 4-cylinder. I think that's pretty much it.
yeah, that's about it. So
dual magnetos, the standard.
Yep. So what's the minimum fuel grade that can go in that?
I think it's 80/87. That's according to the POH.
Now, if I remember correctly, the 360s.
We use 100 low lead, if that's what you
Yeah.
want to know.
Now,
If you ask what's the lowest grade?
yeah. So what's the lowest grade that's appropriate? How much horsepower is that thing generating?
180.
So from what I'm looking at from Lycoming is the IO360 or not the IO360, but the O360 that's rated at 180 horsepower should be using 100 octane.
Right. But here's the trick on this one again, because they swapped the engine. They did not, the POH that you're looking at is basically for the original, factory engine.
Yeah, the 320.
They had it. Right. So I think to answer your question, I think, okay, so the grade or the fuel grade that needs to be put into this airplane is 100 low lead.
Yes. So the POH is saying 80 or 87, right? Which is what would be appropriate for the 150 horsepower 320.
Right.
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 I know the 360 is like one of the few Lycoming engines that you cannot get a MoGas STC that would drop you back down to an 80 or 87 octane. Because I have that engine.
Okay.
But so this thing's got a primer on it, right?
On the one I'm using, I think they took the primer. Yeah, I think there might be a primer. I think they got the primer on. Yeah, they still got it on. I know they removed some of the airplanes. They removed the primers off. This one still got it on.
So what's that primer doing? Like when you go to use that primer?
It's basically a pump, a manual pump to push the actual fuel in the lines into the combustion area.
All right.
Not to the combustion. I'm sorry, not to the combustion. To the to push the fuel in the line towards the carburetor.
So the primer actually has 3 injectors that squirts it right around the intake valve. It's not putting it to the carburetor. If you look to the POH on the fuel diagram, you'll actually see that it's got, at least again, according to the POH you sent me. But again, this is how most primer systems work, is they have 3 little like squirters, injectors that squirt right at the intake valve. So that the fuel is right there. And the reason they do it that way, as opposed to squirting it into the carburetor, is the carburetor is mounted beneath the engine. So if it squirts into the carburetor, it can dribble out of the engine. And then that's where you get a huge risk of fire. If you go to your POH, the PDF POH that you sent me, I'm trying to find the digital page.
I'm looking at it. It's actually page 22, the digital. Yep. Yeah, I'm looking at it right.
You see how you got your carburetor?
Yep.
Now look where that primer line goes.
Okay, there you go. So it goes from the float if I may call it the float, or
Mhm.
the strainer, directly into the yeah, you're right, directly into these three lines that you mentioned, the whatever you call them.
Yeah, little squirters, little
Treatment, yeah,
injectors.
yeah,
Calling them injectors is a little wrong because they're not
right, because
actually
it's
fuel
not, yeah,
injectors.
right.
Um, so that's just what a lot of people think is, once that primer starts getting stiff, because they do get stiff, they wear out, and they're kind of a pain to use after 40 years of the dang thing getting used. They
Okay,
think they can just pump the throttle to prime it, but then you run the risk of a
fire.
fire. Yep, you
Yeah.
run the risk of that fire, right? What would you do if the engine caught fire during flight, or not during
Oh,
flight, during start?
I'd kill the fuel supply, or the mixture. I'd cool it down. I'd put full power up, and I'll continue cranking until either the engine starts, and if it will, I'll keep it at least 1700 RPM for about a minute, and then hopefully it'll die before that because there's not going to be any fuel added to the system. I guess that should be it. And then
Yeah,
prepare to exit.
yeah, that's actually exactly it. All right. Let's get into the electric system. So, what pretty much what voltage is this? Is this electric system?
12 volt. It's a 12-volt battery.
Okay.
The electrical system itself is a 14-volt alternator.
All right.
So it's a 14-volt alternator attached to a 12-volt system, going through a set of fuses, or push button fuses, whatever they call them.
Circuit breakers. Yep.
Circuit breakers. That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, there ain't a whole lot going on in this thing's electrical system, right?
Well, I think there's a reason why they built these Vipers like that, because they wanted to keep them very, very simple, so that during training, students won't get too creative. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, students won't be either too creative, and there's less stuff to go wrong. There's less stuff to fail, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a rough estimate on, let's say your alternator failed? Do you have a rough estimate on how much battery life you'll have left?
Okay, so in reality, it'll be probably between 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what system you're going to keep on, running. Because I have one, I think if I remember, I got two G5s in it. The G5s, they have their own battery, so they're going to run for 4 hours or more. So if there is a bus going to them, you can disable that one. That's going to take a few amps off the battery. And you just start disabling systems you don't need as you go, to increase to decrease battery consumption until you get to where you need to go. Hopefully you'll find a place to land where you can look at the problem.
Awesome.
Or that's in I would say that's in catastrophic failure of the electrical system. And the first thing, or the first interaction I would do, is to try to reset the alternator button, which just turn it off, give it about 10 seconds, turn it back on, see if it works. Run across the fuses, see if anything popped or anything. Just generic stuff. But that's the game plan if it ever happens.
Awesome. Any hydraulic systems in this airplane?
Only on the brake.
Awesome. Now you said you've got G5s, so I normally ask some questions about your vacuum system, but given that you probably don't have a vacuum system anymore.
No vacuum system.
There's no vacuum system on this at all.
Nope.
So what computer, right? So you've got two G5s, and then you've got
430. So I think it's a GTX 3100. I'm not sure about it. The transponder. I think the transponder, the 430, the two G5s. That's to the best of my memory.
Awesome. Well, I mean, it seems like a pretty nice nice panel. It's a whole lot better than my panel, I'll tell you that.
Actually, they actually just installed the digital fuel gauges, digital ammeter. They did install 5.0 volt USBs. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's been a
They-
while since I flew it. That's why I'm a little, having a little
No,
hard time.
I mean the fact that you know that. I mean, I know when I went through private pilot, they were like, "What do you have?" I was like, I got vacuum pumps and I got Garmin 430." And they're like, "What does it do?" I was like, "No, I'm not. To be honest, I'm not really that sure." No.
No, I think that's why I
Um,
picked up this. This is why I picked up this plane for the check ride. It's because it's the one I've been flying during these 3 years. It's the one I flew the most. And when I said
Awesome.
them, look, you're maybe 70 hours total, and I don't know, 60 hours total out of my whole time. I feel
All right.
comfortable.
So then I'll ask, you've got your G5s, which have AHRS and ADC, as opposed to vacuum pumps and gyros and all that jazz. What instrumentation are you going to lose if you end up with this plugged static port?
What instrumentation I'm going to lose these?
Your static port gets
Oh.
plugged.
If my static works. I love that.
Yeah.
No, let me think. Okay. So, definitely the altimeter, and the VSI.
Right.
And I think this is just about the only two steam gauges left in the
Is the only two steam gauges left in the plane?
in the physical steam gauge configuration. Just making yeah, the altimeter, yeah.
Right. So the VSI, if that thing gets plugged, it's not obviously not gonna work because it doesn't have any data.
I think it's
your airspeed might function a little weird too.
Yeah.
It's still gonna work, right?
Mm-hmm. We don't go by it anyway, so I'm just kidding.
Right?
I'm just joking.
So you said this thing's carbureted, right? What are you kind of susceptible to when it comes to a carburetor, or what are some of the downsides of having a carbureted airplane versus a fuel injected airplane?
Okay. Carburetor is susceptible to icing at certain conditions, under certain conditions, high humidity, low temperatures. It's also subject to mechanical failure, such as, it can be stuck on or stuck off, meaning it can be stuck in the open position or in the closed position. It can, when it comes to power, you get more power from an injected engine, or should I say an injected fuel system than a carburetor system. And reason is because it's an electronic versus mechanical. It's two different reactions time. What do you call it? Injection engines or injection systems are more can give you more power. Can give you, I think the downside of an injection system is that in hot starts you'll get a longer time to crank versus carburetor. I think that's pretty much it. The majority of these issues.
All right. I just try and clean it up a little bit, right? And the only thing I asked about was what are some of the downsides of a carbureted system. You gave me a lot, right? You gave me benefits of fuel injected, benefits of this and that. So downsides of a carbureted system, just to clean it up. I'm susceptible to carburetor icing, more susceptible to, I can be more susceptible to mechanical failures of a carbureted system given their age. They're not as efficient.
Got it.
Less power. There's like 4 things. Okay. When we start talking more and more and giving DPEs more to work with, it gives them more questions to ask, right? You're digging yourself a hole. Okay. I like to use the phrase, never miss an opportunity to shut up.
I was going to give you the opportunity to say it.
Yeah. So I love it. You have a pretty good understanding of it. Nothing you said was wrong. You just said a lot. Now, how would you notice carburetor icing?
Hopefully I never have to, but if it comes to that, it'll probably start, the RPM will start deteriorate.
Now,
gradually they'll start, slowly going down. You'll feel less power. You're probably, if you're in cruise, your empennage will start dropping because the plane wants to stay up, and kind of like you're starting to get the nose up criteria, or what? Not criteria, but nose up mode. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, the only thing I'd say is the carburetor icing, you're not really going to get the nose up unless you're applying back pressure, right? Unless you have autopilot. Do you have autopilot?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah. Unless you're applying.
But that's why I said in cruise, because your idea is to stay up at the same altitude, but then at the same time you start losing power. Automatically, the plane wants to start descending.
Yep.
You're trying to keep it up, and that's why I said you'll start getting that nose up attitude.
Yep.
That's
Awesome.
what I aimed for. That's what I meant.
Awesome. Now, how are you going to deal with that?
And automatically apply carb heat.
Awesome. What else could you do?
And
Descend to warmer air, right?
either descend, yeah, well, not either, descend to warm air. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I could descend, because like, now what are you going to expect? Like you pulled that carburetor heat on. What are you expecting to happen immediately after applying carburetor heat?
It'll get worse before it gets better.
Awesome. Awesome.
And reason is because there's three things that are going to take effect. The very first one I would say is you're restricting airflow into the carburetor because of icing that's built. So that's one factor. The second thing is you're applying heat into the carburetor system, which tricks the carburetor to think that you are in higher altitude, which would ask it to give him less fuel. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of like the wrong mixture. And and the third thing is that eventually, when all this is going to melt, you're actually melting ice into the combustion area. That thing is going to get mixed with the ignition area where all the spark plugs still firing, trying to keep the engine alive. So that's pretty much it. And then when it's going to dissipate, when it's going to vanish, whatever you want to, vapor, the RPM will gradually start, rising back up, and then you'll know that you got it all out of the system.
Awesome. Now, you've got a heater in this thing, right?
Yes.
All right. Is there any concerns that you might want to be aware of with that heater? Like, let's say you're flying around, it's cold, you put the heater on, and you start feeling a little tired. What do you think might be happening?
Fatigue.
Well, beyond fatigue, right?
I forgot the term. Not hypoxia. The hypoxia could be also, but the other one, I forgot the term. It's carbon monoxide poisoning. I mean.
Well, so you said hypoxia. Hypoxia is an appropriate answer because carbon monoxide poisoning is a type of hypoxia.
Right, but that's
right?
what I meant. Because and reason I mentioned that is because really depending on the altitude you're at. If it happens at 4,000, then it's definitely not hypoxia. It is a hypoxia, but it's carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah,
and it's coming from the exhaust.
Yeah,
Meaning it's not the lack of oxygen.
It's the fact that there is something else binding to your blood cells, not allowing you to get the oxygen that you need, right?
But if you're at 9,000 feet, then it could be a combination of either or this or that.
Yeah. It's just carbon monoxide is a type of hypoxia, right? Hypoxic hypoxia directly related to altitude, lack of pressure, right? Because your lungs function on the basis of pressure, right? If you don't have the pressure, your lungs, you can't push that oxygen from your across your lungs into your blood cells. That is hypoxic hypoxia. That's that 9,000, 10,000 feet cruising altitude, making you all loopy and tired. Hypemic hypoxia, that is the carbon monoxide poisoning. That is something else has bound to your blood cells, so now there is no room for oxygen to bind, right? So hypoxia is a completely appropriate response if you know which version of hypoxia.
Okay.
Right.
So I can include carbon monoxide poisoning in the same answer, meaning I don't have to bring it up. It's just I need to define which hypoxia is it.
Yeah, it'd be hypemic hypoxia, right? And the reason is it's exhaust. It's exhaust gases, right? Because you've got a cracked exhaust manifold, right? So let's get into just just want to ask a couple questions about weight and balance, not necessarily weight and balance specific to your aircraft, because you're like, I don't have the maintenance logs, I don't have the accurate
go
weight
ahead,
and balance, right?
Yeah.
So what are some concerns if I'm operating an aircraft that is the CG is too far forward? It's forward of its limits.
Wow, forward, longer ground roll. Definitely, you're not going to get the climb performance that you should. You're probably going to go half of it or less, depending again. I would say your
What about flare? Am I going to be able to flare properly?
no, not exactly. No,
No.
For you to flare, you need to start at 1,000 feet.
Exactly. Well, I might not have enough. There might not be enough force applied to the tail for me to be able to do that. There was a Cessna 180.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a Cessna 185 that it was on floats, and the Cessna 185 is already notoriously nose heavy when you don't have it on floats. And this guy, this big guy and his big old dad, they went and flew the thing around. They went to flare, he put the yoke to his chest. Airplane didn't do anything.
One of the things I'm aware of is that there are many limits to this machine, and if you treat it like a machine and not like some kind of thing, the manufacturer says you can fly 140. You can fly 140, then yes.
Yeah.
And you need to understand the limitation of this machine.
Well,
that's how I see it.
That's a wonderful segue. So let's get into our speed limitations. What's VNE? Can you describe to me what VNE is and what the appropriate speed would be for your aircraft?
So VNE in the one I'm flying, since it's all in miles per hour, it's 176 miles an hour, and it's the speed you can never exceed.
Awesome. What's VNO?
That's normal operation, and if I'm right, I think it's 140, and you cannot exceed that. Actually, you can exceed that only in smooth air.
Awesome.
That's normal operation, basically.
Awesome. What is? Oh, I wrote down VA wrong. So what is VFE? Your aircraft had two different ones, and it was based on serial number. So what one's appropriate for your aircraft?
The VFE on mine is the one that stands for 125, and it's for flap extended. That's the maximum flap extended speed, or should I say the maximum speed you're allowed to use your flap. And again, it's 125 miles an hour.
All right. What's the max weight you can take off into this thing?
According to the POH, it's 2325.
All right. Now you're saying according to the POH, is there something else that,
Yes. So if you want to hear some funny story, and I wish I had that form right here next to me. So at about a month ago, doing, one of the grounds, going over some things with my instructor, he pulls up this new sheet of weight and balance, and the weight and balance on it became 2450 for the max gross weight. And then he asked me about 2 weeks after to do another weight and balance, whatever, for some other reason. And then I'm looking at the max gross weight on the paper he gave me versus the max gross weight on the POH. And I'm like, okay, so what do I go by? Because the POH says 2325, but then this one says 2450. Then they came up with another update, and things are changing so fast. So I decided to just stick to the POH 2325. And if it increases on, for whatever other reasons, it'll just be beneficial for me. That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't go below.
Yeah, you'll be on the safer, and that's the best way to do it. When there's new documentation coming out and stuff might seem a little, ambiguous, just go for the safest option, right?
Exactly.
Unless there's like a supplemental type certificate sheet, an STC or something like that allowing it. I don't keep up on the Piper Cherokees, STCs. So there could be something that's out there, right?
Oh yeah, I decided to just stick to the POH. Again, unless if they come up with another number that's below 2325, then this is something that definitely will need to work with.
All right. So we worked through a couple emergencies. We're just gonna ask a couple other ones. You got alternator failure and your engine fire during start, which is awesome that you've got those. You got them memorized. This aircraft, no matter what weight category you're in, is not approved for spins.
Right.
But even with that being the case, how would you recover from one?
I've watched too many of your videos on this one. Fight the rudder that kick the rudder that fights you.
Well, what are you going to do first?
First, so power to idle, aileron neutral, rudder opposite direction of the spin, and then aileron, elevator push down. Now, the idea behind all these fancy words is power to idle because your concept is now to try to get the nose down. You don't want to force it up. That's one. Aileron to neutral is because you don't want to induce the spin or a spin to the other direction, or let's say make it worse than it is. So neutral on aileron. The idea of the rudder, and I mentioned kick the one that fights you is because again, and I've never been in a spin, and I hope I never will be, but to my understanding, when you're in a spin, it's hard to tell your gyros which way you're turning. So just fight whatever fights you, and that's the one in your leg. So, and that's easy to find. And then push the nose down, elevator down to gain speed over the wing.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. And, you know, I know everyone always teaches that, you know, just press the rudder opposite of the rotation. What I notice is a lot of students, as soon as you ask that follow-up question of, well, which one? How do you know which one to press? And they're like, well,
I agree.
Well, what?
One of the things that I like about what you're doing is that you're bringing the awareness, and I'm guessing out of experience, versus, you know, people who are just, you know, sitting in airplanes these days. And I see it because, I mean, I'm still one of them. And you don't get all this information. You just get to how to. And then once you, God forbid, enter into one of these scenarios, you know, your instructor is not going to be there next to you, and you're thinking, okay, now what?
Yeah.
So I like that. It's an awareness.
And that's I know when I taught, you know, when I was teaching, you know, more face-to-face, more private pilot students, I did my best to make sure that they weren't just prepared for a check ride. And I hate seeing instructors that just like, here's the study guide, let's go do the maneuvers, and congratulations, you're a private pilot now. I really hate seeing that because, like, I know when I got my private pilot certificate, even after 117 hours, I was still doing all kinds of dumb shit that I should never I should never been doing, right? Because I'm like, I'm a private pilot. I can do whatever I want. You know, I just had like, you know, as long as I stay within the aircraft's limitations, I should be safe. No.
Yeah, I say different. As long as you're still here talking, that means you know what you're doing, and that's the bottom line.
Yep. I've only had to deal with 3 engine failures. Only put 1 in the dirt, and
wow. Okay, I had my experience actually about March 4th.
Okay, so what happened?
Two airplanes. So I haven't flown in like, I don't know, a month or two, and I did a flight actually prior to that. I think a few days prior to that, just with my instructor to see that I'm up where I should be, and then they endorsed me for another solo cross country. So I'm done with the run up and all that. I'm getting ready to take off. I'm on the runway. I get my clearance and all that, and then I push the throttle forward. And at about, I don't know what, 6, 7, 8 seconds after I started running down the runway, I feel that I'm not getting the full power of the airplane. A quick run on the gauges. I saw everything was good on the oil pressure, oil temperature, and all that. Everything was good. But then I looked up the RPM. They showed 2,300, and I know it's full power. I should be at 2,700. So I pulled back the power and I just canceled the takeoff. Went back to the school parking lot. Asked them to give me a different airplane. So I take. No, it's funny. I'm taking my second airplane. I do the cross country. I fly Santa Monica to Santa Barbara, all that. You know, everything's fine with the flight. I come back. I want to land. Now I'm in the downwind doing 110 knots, trying to slow it down. Flap 3 wouldn't want to retract. Not retract, sorry. That doesn't want to, deploy. And I'm thinking, what the heck now? I mean, so I'm trying to figure what's the best way and how to approach this. So I decided not to stress not to push this the lever to get the third flap, and I decided to just do a little higher approach to landing speed, and that's what I did. I actually landed it at 20 miles an hour faster than the average speed that I usually do, and just took a longer run to stop, and I got it down.
Yeah, I mean, no flap landings are like, I know they're not, to the best of my knowledge, they're not a tested event, but I mean, learning how to do them is it's vital, right? Even in my aircraft's POH, it specifically states like, do not attempt, water landings with no flaps. Do not attempt, landings with no flaps.
Yeah.
But I mean, the day that they get stuck, like, I'm going to be happy that I know how to do it. Right? They're hydraulic. I mean, all it takes is a hydraulic leak for me to not have any flaps.
That's I think is the name of the whole game here. What you just said, if you don't ever practice it, you'll never know.
Exactly.
And in my case, I never practiced it. I never practiced what do you call it? Takeoff abort. I never did that. That's something I just had to do. And I started getting airborne with the first attempt. It was just my insights that just told me, yeah, you're not getting the power. You're not going to climb. And I just, boom, I pulled the power back. And with the landing thing, it's like, I have to land with or without the flaps. It's going to have to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they're going to clear me into LAX on a 12,000 foot runway for that. So might as well take my chances here at Santa Monica and be done with it. And it was great.
I've done that in the CRJ 200 and
holy cow.
You definitely use a lot more. You definitely use a lot more runway.
I can imagine.
So, do you seem to be able to handle most of these emergencies pretty well? Let's just talk about inadvertent entry into instrument meteorological conditions, or you're flying along, visibility starts to go down. What are you going to do?
So automatically, of course, I will do a 180. That's my first reaction, to try to do a 180. I'll do it in with the 1 minute on the clock before I start panicking, hopefully. But yeah, I'll put a clock. I'll do 1 minute coordinated turn. Once I'm done with the 180, I will expect to be out of the clouds within a minute or two. If that doesn't happen, I will try to keep the plane on the same course, knowing that I'm heading in the direction I just came from, knowing where I'm going. If I can, I will try to climb, maybe, but not more than 500 to 1,000 feet. And the reason is because you can never know when that top of clouds are going to be. And automatically, I will talk to the controlling agency I'm with, to ask if they can, divert me, or if they can help me find a VFR area, notifying them that I'm a VFR pilot in an IMC condition.
Awesome. That is it. Climbing, I'm not necessarily, I'd really recommend climbing, because again, you're in, unless you're on with a controller already, you don't know where the traffic is, right? Not everybody's got ADS-B out. Like, sure, probably. I think in California, everybody's going to have ADS-B out.
But I also doubt anybody's going to be in the clouds with no ADS-B. That's.
I mean,
you never know. You're right. But
yeah, you never know, right? There could be another one. There could be another one of you out there. Somebody out there, another VFR pilot with no, accidentally got in the same weather that you did.
Yeah, but yeah, okay, I'm with you. You better be on the same frequency as well. So.
Right. But what you just don't want to do is descend. Like climbing, sure, why not? Depending on the weather, you don't want to risk getting into icing conditions as you continue to climb. But you just definitely don't descend. I've heard some people start saying like, yeah, I'll turn around and descend. The clouds don't go all the way to the ground. I was like, are you sure? You
come around my parts, buddy. No, one of the things I got to tell you is that unlike any other scenarios in life, when you're up in the air and you get to any situation, the one thing you don't want to do is never get creative.
No.
Stick to your study, stick to your learning, stick to your rules of thumb, things that you've discussed, with anybody else or, on the ground, if you ever come up on these solutions. And I think that's the learning thing that should be passed out to all these students out there, because most of them will just try to do stupid stuff that you never know. And it won't end up good. That's for sure.
Believe me, some of the creative things I have seen is
I can imagine.
Some of these students, it's just there's a lot.
You need to do a video on that, like a 10 seconds from each one of them for about an hour and post that. That's gonna be
See, so I don't really like to do that because, like, sure, the student will probably recognize themselves, but nobody else will. But again, it almost feels bullying. Like I do like to use some examples, but I try to keep them really vague,
I
so
hear
that
you,
no
man.
student ever feels like they're being specifically targeted. Because
I
that's the
hear you,
last
man.
thing I want, right? I know if I was on the other end of that, I wouldn't want my instructor out there talking shit about the fancy, creative stuff I was doing.
No, I agree. That's something in it, I guess. Uh,
Um, all right, let's get into some airworthiness. What documents do you need in your airplane?
um, in the airplane. So you need the airworthiness certificate. You'll need the registration, radio certificate if you're going to fly internationally, the operating manual or the POH, and the weight and balance.
All right. Now, your aircraft, as you've already said, has G5s and it has, Garmin 430 and a GTN 370 or whatever transponder is in it. Is that included in the aircraft's original? And it even has an STC, right? It even has the STC for the engine. Is that included in the original operator POH?
No, it's going to be supplemental.
Yep.
So it has to be like, it's pretty much like when you buy a new device, it comes with the manual and everything else. That has to be in the plane for you to use it in case if you ever need to. It's not going to be part of the actual manual or the POH, because I think the POH is comes out from the factory based on a serial number, and when it comes out based on that, eventually, or not eventually, sorry, when it comes out like that, when it comes out, these devices weren't in there, so it's only supplemental.
Yep. So just make sure, include that, right? When the DPE asks the question, what documents do you need, right? Airworthiness certificate, registration, radio operator certificate, if you're going international, operator's handbook, weight and balance, along with any supplements like the supplement for my G5s, the supplement for my Garmin's, and the supplement for my transponder, right? These are all things that weren't installed from the factory. Like, because even, again, personally in my airplane, what's in it that wasn't installed originally?
Attitude
Not
indicator.
much. Yeah.
Oh
No,
my God.
well, no, I've got vortex generators. I've got all kinds of other weird stuff on the
That's
outside.
nice.
Oh, I love them. I love them. I've gotten yeeted off the water by some jet skis a couple different times, like cutting me off when I'm trying to land on the water. And
No, really?
yeah. And to be honest, like, I don't get it. Like, they see an airplane trying to land and they're like, I'm gonna go look at it.
I gotta ask you this. So what was your and I'm guessing VSO, what was your VSO before you installed it?
So I'm trying to remember. I think the VSO, the stall speed, the published stall speed before them was 53. The STC doesn't specifically call out a lower stall speed.
They won't. But
no, it didn't specifically say it, but I know I've had the thing flying at 38.
Wow.
So
wow. You can almost hover, man. You can almost hover.
Yeah, it was. And that's the thing is, like, when that jet ski incident, when it bumped me back up off the water, I was probably still in ground effect or water effect. So calling it 38 might be a little low from what it would be in, like, still smooth air. But
the idea that you could have gone lower below your VSO, and confidently knowing that you're going to be able to.
Yeah, and it was more about lateral control that those vortex generators really offered me. Sure, I've got big ailerons and everything, but the fact that it didn't stall, but the fact that it maintained just a flat climb out, like, it was, oh my God.
And you got a Cub, right?
No, I have a Lake 200.
I don't know what a Lake 200
here,
is.
I'll just,
Cub. Yeah, no, I just thought you had a Cub. I don't know why I thought you had a Cub.
Here, I'll just pull it up.
Now that you're saying it, that's even a bigger wow. Because I know the Cubs, everybody knows they can go very slow, but
yeah, that's like what they're designed for.
But if you're saying your VSO was about 58, or what is it, like the Piper type size kind of airplane?
So here it is. This is the lakes.
Oh, nice! Right? It's a what do you call it?
The flying boat.
Yeah, but I forgot the term anyway.
But yeah.
Wow, that's a cool one, man.
Yeah, this one's mine.
That is really cool.
But yeah, you can see the vortex generators all along the leading edge. And it's not just vortex generators on the leading edge. They got them on the flaps too.
What was that thing on top of it? Is that the engine?
Yeah, that's the engine.
Yeah.
Keeps it out of the water
Yeah.
because it
No, I
lands
wasn't
on the belly.
Right. And the landing gear is retracted, or is it?
Yep. See,
Man, that is so cool.
you can even beach the thing.
What's the top speed of it?
I cruise at like 115.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean,
with all this drag you got on it.
exactly. I know it's yeah, I mean, I cruise at like 115, burning 10 an hour, so it's not great.
I think you're just about where we at. Oh, you're just about where we at.
Yep. So continuing on, right? If you were to grab that logbook, right, the maintenance logbook of your aircraft, what are you going to be looking for in that maintenance logbook to verify that, well, the aircraft's still airworthy?
That all airworthiness directives have been serviced. I'll be looking for more. The ones I'll put my attention on is going to be the reoccurring ones. Because the ones that comes out, because of whatever, how someone found something and decided to put an airworthiness directive out there. But the reoccurring ones, those are the ones that usually have consistency and issues. So that's why they're reoccurring. I'm going to be looking for those. I'm going to be looking for, along with that, I'm going to be looking for the work. How do you say the stickers? The mechanic stickers showing that there was the repairs or maintenance that should be done on the aircraft is all there. I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for okay, so we're talking the airworthiness directive. We're talking, sorry, I'm just a little lost for a second. Airworthiness directive that's pretty much what I'm going to be looking for.
Okay. So what are the required inspections? What are the required inspections and maintenance?
Are annual VOR every 30 days. Well, annual every 12 months, 12 calendar months. VOR every 30 days. 100 hours, altimeter pitot-static system every 24 calendar months, transponder every 24 calendar months, and the ELT every 12 months with either 1/2 of the battery life consumed or for unknown amount of time or unknown amount of time used or unknown amount of time on.
Yep. So it's not half the battery's life consumed. It's half the battery's like advertised life, right? So
okay.
Here, let me grab a 9-volt battery, right? If I look at this 9-volt battery, it says that it expires March of 2027. All right. So if I bought this in March of 2025, I would have to replace this in March of 2026.
Right.
If it was an ELT battery. Okay.
Right.
It's not that the battery's like used half, it's not 50% on my phone kind of thing, right?
So half the battery useful life.
Yep, half the battery's useful life, right?
Okay.
I don't know why half, right? If I had a 9-volt battery in my ELT, I'd probably want to replace that every year, whether or not the 9-volt battery was good till 2027, or it's a 9-volt battery. Yeah. Okay, and all of those things are gonna be in the maintenance log. Have you ever seen a maintenance log for your aircraft? Right, they're pretty cumbersome and kind of a disaster. If we're gonna be honest.
True. I can tell you the funniest thing. I'm pre-check right now. With a check ride right around the corner, and I just found 2 days ago that the plane I'm going to take the check ride has an annual signed by an AMP and not by an IA. So now the school decided to send it back to the same shop to get an IA, take a look at it, and because of this whole noise that's going around it now, they decided to do a full-blown annual on it.
I mean, yeah, that kind of like, I think that's what I would rather, think about you're flying the thing, right? I'd rather the person who's qualified doing it. And I help with all of my annuals too. So, if you get the opportunity, it's worth it.
The truth is that if you were, okay, and I saw the sticker for the 100 hours, it was, I think, January 31st. So you're talking less than 2 months ago. But then you think about it, if they were to just say, okay, let's get the same mechanic to give us or whatever the bar, the IA one is, just to trust that mechanic and give us the IA signature on it. Imagine the Pandora box you just opened.
Exactly. Like if something happens, right?
Exactly.
So, your aircraft, right? It's being used, it's being used for a flight school, right? So it requires that 100-hour inspection. Let's say
Right.
you and a buddy go buy an airplane, right? And your buddy wants to receive instruction in that airplane. Does that airplane still need a 100-hour inspection?
Okay, so we're buying it, me and him.
Yeah, you and your kid, you and your buddy, you and anybody,
Okay.
right? Y'all go buy an airplane, and
No, you don't.
right?
The truth to say, and that's the sad truth, is that you don't need nothing if it's yours. You only need it if anybody ever asks for it. And we're talking.
I obviously can't recommend that, right?
It's like they say, you only need a license when you get caught, right?
Obviously, I cannot recommend avoiding the
know.
required maintenance on an aircraft, but
Okay.
yeah, since you guys own the airplane and you're going and getting an instructor from the outside, then you don't need that 100-hour inspection, right? Now your aircraft, right? It's got those G5s. But it still has pretty much all the backup standbys, right? It still has all the steam gauges. The only thing that was honestly replaced was an attitude indicator, right? Y'all took out the attitude indicator and the heading indicator to replace it with G5s. Let's say both of those G5s are dead. Is this aircraft still airworthy?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if you go to the 91-205, it doesn't say you need to have G5s on it.
Well, so it's not necessarily about G5s, right? Like we look at what instrumentation is available still to us, right? So if we lose both of our G5s,
the attitude indicator is the best one is right over the dashboard. To start with that.
Yep.
And again, as long as you're a VSR, you have all the tools you have are out there in front of you. You just need to use them.
All right. Now let's say that there's just another piece of equipment that's broken. Like, to be honest, I can't even think of one specifically for your aircraft. But let's just say there's another item on your aircraft that is broken. Where are you gonna? What are all the references that you're gonna go look through?
So I'm gonna start with 91-213 to see what is required on this thing to be airworthy. To start, not to be airworthy. Yeah, if I may say, yes, to be airworthy. And that will reference me probably down to 91-205, and I'll start with that, look through the whole list, whatever day, nighttime, depending, I'm going to look into that. After that, I'm going to look in, that's it, actually, that's it. Yeah, 91-213 should tell you pretty much everything on it.
Yep. So what is 91-213 telling you to check, right? 91-213 tells you to check 91-205. What are the other items in 91-213?
That's a good question. I need to look it up again.
All right. So airworthiness directives, type certificate data sheet, supplemental type certificates, and kind of operation equipment list, right?
Which we don't have yet.
Yeah, both and MEL if your aircraft does have an MEL.
We don't have that one either.
So airworthiness directives, right? Your aircraft has some airworthiness directives. Every aircraft, there ain't no damn airplane out there that doesn't have an airworthiness directive.
I think to answer that, you can start pulling. You pull the TCDS, and that'll tell you pretty much, everything that this aircraft should have.
Yep.
Along with 91-213, you just need to confirm that it has it. Along with 91-205. To be sure that none of that is missing, and if everything is in order, you're most likely that you're legit.
Yep. The only thing is just make sure STCs. A lot of students forget STCs, especially since you've got a new engine in yours. There could be other items that are necessary. I'm trying to think of my STCs because I've got the vortex generators, the bat wings, the new heater. The new cargo door, right? I guess with the new cargo door, right? If the latch, obviously, if the door handle for that cargo door doesn't work, well, it's not in 91-205. It's not in this. It's not in that. It's in my supplemental type certificate that door handle has to work, right?
Okay.
So just don't forget STCs, right?
Okay.
Let's get into some regulations. what can you do now? Well, you get your private pilot certificate. Congratulations, right? What are you now allowed to do?
So I'm allowed to fly friends. I'm allowed to fly for charity. I'm allowed to do pretty much everything I want, except for for being hired, or should I, except for use the license for a job, if I may call it this way, on the simplest way. I think that's pretty much it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's you can do many things as long as you don't get compensated for those things, as long as you don't turn yourself into a taxi type services thing, as long as you keep your forgot what it's called, but as long as you don't push yourself into situations where you kind of like looking to fly. So yes, it happened, and let's go fly. Then you should be fine.
Yep. Now, and that's a great way to put it, right? As long as you're not out here like, yo, how can I get some hours? What do I need to do to go and get some hours, right?
Right.
What a very common thing that people do with their cars, right? They'll drive somebody to the airport and people will pay them for gas, right? Now, if you own your own airplane, this seems like a reasonable thing to do with your own aircraft. Fly someone from where they're at to another airport so that they can, go get on their big airliner, and they're going to give you $50 for gas. Is that okay? No, because it's compensation, right? And you don't have a common purpose.
Right. You don't have a common purpose.
That's the big deal, right? Now, if you're both flying to, whatever airport to go hop on an airliner flight, fair game.
Yeah.
Right. Me and my wife have done that. Like, we have flown our airplane to another airport to then go hop on an airliner with her flight benefits.
Yep.
Out of our. That is completely fine.
Purpose. Yeah.
Right. Is there any airspace, even as a private pilot, nothing else, just a private pilot, that you can't go into?
Alpha.
Where does Alpha start?
Restrict and prohibited. I'm sorry.
Yes, Alpha and prohibited. Yep. I guess prohibited is included in that. Good catch.
Okay. But I got to ask you something. I never thought I would have to. So it's kind of tricky thing, but because Alpha is only, and to my humble opinion, is only in the United States, it starts at 18,000. I haven't even checked out. So it doesn't matter. But say you're in a terrain area, say in the Himalayas, and the Alpha starts at 26,000. I don't know, at 27,000. So how does that work there?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I haven't flown in the Himalayas.
No, but do you see where I'm going with this?
I get what you're saying. If I remember correctly, there is a.
What I'm trying to say is that if your AGL is less than 18,000, but Alpha is in that AGL, how does that work? Anyway, I think we're just
I mean that again, like Alpha does only exist in the United States, and there are no mountains in the United States that would punch into Alpha.
There is, but not in the continental United States. It's actually Mount in Alaska. It's Mount McKinley. I think it's at 28,000.
Yeah, you know what? I need to look that up then.
But I don't know the airspace in Alaska, and that's why I'm just saying. So from a mountainous terrain, Mount McKinley is the highest, in the United States, because it's United States terrain, okay, or territory. And Alpha starts at 18,000, so I just need to check on Alaska.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna
I like that.
Yeah, because to be honest, I've never thought of that, because I've never.
And I never thought about it until actually now, when you mentioned that in the United States, and I was thinking, wait a minute, and you get where I'm going. So.
Oh shit.
Definitely an interesting point to check. I'm going to look into it myself. Because I know the highest point in the continental U.S. I think it's I don't know if it's Mount St. Helens in Washington.
It might be. It's up at 14,000, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. But if it's around 14,000, there's many, well, not many, but there's at least 4 or 5 peaks that I can think of around that same altitude, but that's still, again, below Alpha.
All right. So You can now go into Bravo airspace. Can you describe to me what a clearance into Bravo airspace sounds like?
Yeah. So whatever LA Center, fine 1234, Cherokee 1234.
Like to transition your airspace?
Like to transition your airspace, requesting permission into the Bravo.
All right.
And then they would have to say, "Fine, okay, you go ahead. I'll let you do your part."
Oh, no. I was just asking, what would you expect to hear back to know that you are cleared into the Bravo?
Whatever clearance they will issue me, it has to be followed by the words, "You are cleared into the Bravo."
Awesome.
If they didn't give you this portion of the clearance, whatever it is, you are still not allowed into the Bravo.
All right. So let's say, congratulations, you got cleared into the Bravo. What kind of VFR do you need to maintain, right? Because they're going to tell you, maintain VFR, cleared into the Bravo via such and such transition.
3 miles, you mean as far as visibility and cloud clearance? Okay,
yep.
So 3 miles clear of cloud.
Awesome. Now, let's say you're at a Delta airport. It's like 2 mile visibility with 2,000 foot ceilings. Is there any way that you could leave that airport?
You can ask for a special VFR if the airport allows it. And I would say, yeah, you can use a special VFR rule, but know that if it gets worse above what you're planning, you'll need to land in that same condition. So I think you might want to reconsider that before you do it, especially when you're a new pilot.
That's definitely. Now, can you do this at night?
Yep, if you're IFR. And since
if
you're
you
not,
haven't.
if you got IFR rating.
Awesome. So let's get into some aerodynamics. I normally ask what do flaps do for us, but given that you've already landed without them, I'm assuming you got a pretty good understanding of what flaps do for
Let's
you.
just say for the record, it's not needed for this portion of the flight.
Yeah. All right. So can you describe to me what happens during a stall?
So a stall is basically the angle of the airfoil has achieved the critical angle of attack, meaning between the airfoil and the relative wind.
All right. And what happens at that critical angle of attack?
The air above the airfoil top portion, the camber, separates from the lower portion, and because there's no attachment on the backside of it, you lose lift. You don't generate lift.
All right. Now, talking about lift, what are the two different principles in regards to the generation of lift that are covered in the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge? I know a bunch of people get in the comments of these things going, well, what about all these other ones?
Generating of lift is on the basis of the principles written by Einstein, third law of
well, it's Newton, not Einstein.
Newton, I'm sorry, not. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, well, I guess, but like Einstein was a little more.
Einstein wrote it. So Newton's third law and Bernoulli's principle.
Okay.
Bernoulli's principles is basically saying that when you constrict a certain liquid into a tube or anything, it will generate speed, which will decrease pressure.
Right. I wouldn't necessarily say. I would try to pull that kind of tube portion out of it, because is our wing a tube?
Okay.
No, our wing's not a tube, right?
No tube, yeah.
So it's when what Bernoulli's principle.
I was gonna say through a bottleneck.
Well, yeah. So what Bernoulli's principle really states is that when the velocity of a fluid increases, its internal pressure drops. That's really what Bernoulli's principle states. But when you cause that restriction, it needs to accelerate for the same mass entering the system to equal the same mass exiting the system. Right?
Now I need Einstein next to me. What did you just say?
Well, so what it's saying is that
I got you.
Right. And that's why we get that drop in pressure. It's less about the tube. It's more about when a fluid meets a restriction, its velocity has to increase, which causes a drop of that fluid's internal pressure. which is why we
Okay.
get that separation of high and low pressure, right?
Okay.
And then Newton's third law, that one's pretty straightforward, right?
For
Every
every
action-
reaction, there's an opposite reaction.
Awesome. Now, what are the two different types of drag?
Parasite and induced
All right. What is induced drag?
byproduct of lift,
It's a byproduct of lift, right? And parasitic drag?
rivet, flat, anything that is outside the flat part, the flat areas, I'm going to say, or the
Well,
smooth areas,
Yeah, it's anything that would disrupt the smooth laminar flow, right?
pretty much, yeah.
And so that's why a bunch of brand new airplanes are being made out of composite and they're super smooth, right? Look
Yeah.
at a Cirrus, right? Yeah, ain't no rivets to be found anywhere on a Cirrus.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
All right. So what would happen if we were to stall this aircraft in an uncoordinated fashion? Or what are we risking?
So, spin.
Yep. So we could possibly enter spin. Do you know the 4 phases of a spin?
That's a good one. Entering CPN, fully developed, and recover or
All right.
recovery.
How do we recover from a spin? Oh, we already talked about that one. Yeah, we already brought that one up. Yeah, sorry. So, can you talk to me about adverse yaw? Like, what causes adverse yaw?
So adverse yaw is a byproduct of uncoordinated flight. And in simple words to say it is when your tail doesn't chase your nose in the same direction, you're causing drag. That drag is coming from one wing, which is usually going to be the higher wing. Actually, no, I don't think I should go there because it's nothing. It's got a little bit of it, but it's not related to what we just saw. I
Yeah,
think it's a different issue. Yeah, it's a different.
yeah. So I feel like you went a little bit more into like the uncoordination, the stalling, right? So adverse yaw. What causes adverse yaw? The generation of lift on the outside wing.
Right.
That's it. That is the end of the answer, right? Remember, anytime a DPE asks you a question, you answer that question. Like, do you know what time it is? Yes. I need to put that on a t-shirt. DPE asks, do you know what time it is? Yes.
I think it's gonna be a good T-shirt to sell, man. Okay.
Right. So it's more of that generation of lift. And then once we get into like a fully established turn, right, when we have that outside wing spinning or moving faster, since it moves faster, it's
Generating drag.
it generates more drag,
Yeah.
which again can cause you a little bit of adverse yaw. Right.
Right.
I know I've done some adverse yaw exercises in a glider, and you can get to like, it's ridiculous, like 60 degrees of yaw just by using aileron. It's because
Wow.
you go to bank over and it does like this. It's
Wow.
yeah, they are.
Wow.
It is
Yeah,
nuts.
but they got the kind of wings like a freaking U2, man. These things are so long. It's like
Yes. Oh my God.
massive.
So what are the turning tendencies that are talked about in the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge?
Turning tendencies. P factor, torque, spiral slipstream, and I got it. And gyroscopic precession.
Gyroscopic precession, right? Can you
P
describe to me?
factor.
Yeah. Can
Yeah.
you describe to me what causes P factor?
So the ascending blade is biting more air than the ascending blade, or it's called asymmetric propeller chewing, I would call it.
Asymmetric propeller loading, asymmetric propeller
Loading.
thrust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's the descending blade is generating more lift than the ascending blade, right? Because
Right.
it's got a greater angle of attack to the relative wind,
Right.
right? Now you've got we're gonna get into a little bit of a navigation, right? And I saw your cross country plan, and I see that every bit of it is GPS. So with that being the
Yes.
case, let's talk about GPS. How does GPS work?
Wait. There's
Okay.
one thing about this one I sent you because I didn't have the time to prepare a manual navlog or whatever, paper navlog.
Okay.
But if you also look at that navlog, check out the headwind. This is one flight I would never do.
Yeah, I saw that there was an average of like 27 knot headwind or something like that.
Yeah,
And,
crazy
you know,
wind.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's the thing. If you don't want to go over navlog, if you feel comfortable working
No,
a
I'm
whiz
good.
wheel, and yeah,
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
You saying you're good? You don't really want to cover cross country procedures?
No, I'm saying, yeah, let's go.
Oh,
Yeah, let's
all
do
right.
it,
Let's
yeah.
dig into it. Awesome.
Open it
Awesome.
up.
Awesome.
Show me the things on the GPS I didn't know because I'm gonna need to know them. So yeah,
Well,
let's go ahead.
it's not just that you didn't know. It's just that, when I see a student that uses only GPS waypoints, it's like, okay, one of two things is happening. They're either not comfortable with ground-based navigation, or they're not comfortable with using,
No, I just
actual
got
way.
lazy. Oh no, I'm just gonna admit it that full blown screen. I got lazy. Yes.
And that's the other option.
Yeah. I always say, it's okay to get lazy as long as you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing and you follow what you think you're doing, you're going to find yourself going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and complacency is definitely, you don't want to fall susceptible to complacency. I know I've definitely, everybody's fallen victim to complacency every once in a while.
Point of convenience, yeah. Point of convenience. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I do see here. I'll share my screen real quick just so you can see what I'm staring at.
If you're gonna, because I was gonna pull this off. To pull it out of my bag.
So you're seeing your navlog right here, correct?
Yep.
Can you read it?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah, I can read it. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Now,
good
I want to bring up this right here. Rain. Given that you are using GPS as the sole form of navigation on this navlog, what is rain?
So I know what is rain. I don't know nothing about how to use it. All I know is that as long as it shows green, it means you will not have GPS outages. Rain stands for I forgot. RAIN stands for autonomous something recovery. Never mind.
Receiver
autonomous in. Nah, you got me.
Receiver autonomous integrity monitoring.
Monitoring, yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of like a system that monitors the GPS and it tells you that if there's going to be any outages, you'll see it here.
It's not. It's instrument.
Okay.
We're getting into instrument level. What I really just wanted to make sure you knew is if you were going to use GPS as a sole form of navigation, on a GPS that's more than approved to be used as a sole form of navigation, that you know what it looks like when it's wrong, right? I don't care that you know that you need 6 satellites, 7 satellites. What are you going to get a vertical? Are you going to get VNAV? Because you're not going to be using VNAV, right? You're not going to be using any of this stuff. But you know what wrong looks like. That's really the big takeaway. All right.
Yep.
And I see that you've got, where's your fuel burn? Extra fuel, landing fuel. So I see you've got a reserve fuel of 6.7. What is that based on?
That's based on the POH.
Okay, so it's based on your fuel burn from the POH. You're right.
Fuel burn from the POH, yes.
So why do I need 6.7 and not 8? Or why can't I land with 1?
So that's a mandatory. That's the 30 minutes VFR mandatory for day and 45 minutes for night, if there was.
Awesome. So you are well aware that you need 45 minutes of extra gas or 30 minutes of extra gas
for daytime.
For daytime, right? What's this alternate for? I'm seeing that you put an alternate in here.
Right. And I think it's GS.
Okay, so you've got this one right here.
It's SBP, yeah, SBP.
SBP. Awesome.
And for whatever 4.6, whatever gallons that it did say, that's the distance from the destination airport to this airport.
All right.
Based on the wind, altitude, and it's all, got it configured to this much of fuel consumption that would be needed for that portion of the flight.
All right. My last question is, what website are you using for this?
ForeFlight.
Oh, this is ForeFlight? You can print this out of ForeFlight?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I use Garmin Pilot, so I haven't used ForeFlight in years.
Okay. So yeah, you can pretty much get the navlog out of ForeFlight and you can physically print it into a piece of paper. Yeah, and I always do that to have that as a backup because these devices they get warmed up in this non-AC plane. So
Oh,
Oops.
believe me, I am well aware of that. When I flew my airplane home, by the time I taxied from the hangar that it was parked in to the runway, all of my electronics had shut down due to heat. I was
Wow.
about to shut down due to heat.
No, I can't listen. So you've been there, you know it. One more thing, one more reason why I always print it when I go to these flights is because if I were to be tested on Dead Reckoning, then I would just throw the iPad back because I'm not going to try to do Dead Reckoning with a piece of half a pound equipment sitting on my lap, trying to figure, how much time. And no, just easier to look at the chart when you're holding it and just run the clock.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of people, at least what my first instructor told me is about 3 fingers is about 10 miles on a sectional. Right.
As long as you're holding the sectional.
But yeah, as long as you've got the sectional in your hand, like if you've got the paper chart in your hand, about 3 fingers held on the chart is about 10 miles. Now, for some people that got fatter fingers or thinner fingers or what have you, obviously that's going to be a little, but if you're using that in the event of a diversion, right? You're not using that in the event that
secondary. That's a secondary mean. If we're talking about the idea of having the printed portion or the printed version.
Oh, it didn't save your flight plan. That's frustrating.
You need it? I can.
No, I put it into SkyVector at one point. But here, I'll share my screen and we're going to start going over airspace just to make sure.
Oh, if you want, I can give you the waypoint. It's very,
oh no, it's not a big deal. I looked through your route and it's straightforward. There's not really a whole lot going on there.
Yeah, it's not a desert. There's mountains and desert.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to go around your area. What airspace is this?
Charlie.
That's Charlie airspace. So if I am on the ground here and
surface to 4,400 is where it starts.
Out here?
No, in the inside circle. It starts
No, I'm asking out here.
Oh, 1,600.
Awesome.
Starting at 1,600 up to 4,400.
All right. Why is this blue with dots as opposed to this over here?
Dried out river.
Sometimes water.
Sometimes water.
Yep. It's not always going to be dry. It's not always going to be wet. Sometimes water. Now, again, most of these, especially in the current day and age, this sometimes water is now turning into no times water.
Yeah, when in California, everything what was no water at all, is now all water now.
I know it's kind of a lot, right?
Weather is changing, my friend. Yeah.
What is this right here?
An MOA, military operation area.
Can I go in this?
Yeah, you can. You just need to talk to the agency, the controlling agency to see if it's hot, if it's cold. And as a general rule of thumb, I can tell you that flying VFR, I would plan around it. There's no need to get into these places because it's for military. So, let them do their thing.
Yeah. Out in Wisconsin, the MOAs are a lot bigger. They're kind of hard to avoid. Is there anything barring me from entering this MOA if I don't talk to anybody?
You're saying if there's anything barring you from entering if you don't talk to anyone?
Yeah, if I just take off from here and I just want to fly to here, is there any requirement, any legal requirement for me to talk to anybody while I punch through this MOA?
Well, that's a good question.
No. It doesn't matter if they're hot, cold, what have you. Use caution is the recommendation, right? Use extreme caution. Anywhere where there's going to be live rounds, you're going to see a different kind of airspace. And generally, you're going to see them inside of another MOA.
Okay.
It's going to be a restricted airspace.
Yeah, I think I know one because we have Point Magoo right in our backyard. So, if you know Point Magoo.
No, I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
It's another military base.
Yeah, it's a U.S. naval base.
Right.
But I get the point. Yeah. So if it's
This is what I'm talking about,
yeah, restricted.
right? So we've got a
Inside the
MOA. There's
MOA,
nothing
yeah.
stopping me from going into this MOA, right? This
Mhm.
is where you're going to see a lot of live rounds and stuff, right?
Okay.
Because that's why it's restricted. They don't want anybody getting shot while they're out there practicing. Okay.
Right.
What is this?
So that's an IFR military route.
Awesome. Should I use those for like my own navigation?
You can, well, no, you should expect, jets flying at 250 knots, in excess of 250 knots, or, and you want to stay, you can fly parallel to them within a certain distance, but you don't want to fly on them. You don't want to use them like Victor Airways.
Yeah, just stay away from them, right?
Yeah,
What's this
stay away from them.
airspace?
So that is an Echo starting at the surface,
All right, up to
18,000 alpha.
oh, awesome. Why is this black? That looks like it's like from that looks like it's from like a Bravo, but it's black as opposed to blue. What is it?
Black? I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
These right here, the 100 to surface.
Oh, that's a good question. Why is it black? Is it a Tersa?
It is a Tersa.
Oh yeah, Palm Springs. There you go.
Yeah, it is a Tersa.
But I didn't know the writings are going to be in black, in a different color.
Yep.
That's weird. There you go.
What is a Tersa? What does it provide?
A Tersa is basically an airspace equivalent to a Charlie procedure as far as talking to a controlling, what do you call it, an approach control, in order to get clearance to enter or land at, whatever airport they're above or in or around. And that's basically the simplest way to put it is basically just the idea of flying into a Charlie airspace without the obligation to use it. You don't have to talk to them.
Awesome. That was my follow-up question, because you said something about getting a clearance to land there. And I'm like, look, there's a uncontrolled airport inside the Tersa.
Right.
Right.
No, I said the idea of like flying into a Charlie. It's like, because of the controlling, because of the approach control, it would be smart to talk to them so that they can line you with the rest of the traffic coming in and out of the airport, so they don't end up putting you at your number 100 behind the Cessna that's 50 miles out. So.
Yep. Now we've got two uncontrolled airports right here. You see them?
Yes.
All right. Why is this one filled in and this one's empty?
So one is hard surface landing. The other is probably grass landing.
It's no defined hard surface intended for landing. That's what it means. Could be grass, could be dirt, could be gravel.
Okay.
Could be a number of things. You could look at the AFD to figure out exactly what it is, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I do see, again, you're using GPS, and you're using some nav aids, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
How do I know if this nav aid works?
So you tune to that 116.1 and you turn up the volume on the nav radio to listen to the Morse code that is assigned with this channel.
Now, if I don't hear the Morse code, but I'm getting a signal anyway, is this thing working?
I wouldn't trust it.
Nope, that Morse code is letting you know that it works. Okay. Even if you're getting a signal, there's no guarantee that that signal is correct, right?
Okay.
So here's Bravo airspace, right? This is Vegas.
Okay.
Inside this purple ring, what equipment do I need?
Mode C Veil.
Yep.
Which is a transponder with a reporting altitude, if I'm right.
Yep.
And a two-way radio.
One more piece of equipment.
ADSB out.
ADSB out. There is no requirement for a two-way radio. Wait a minute. I might have to check that one, actually.
In a Bravo?
In a Bravo, yes. Under the Mode C Veil, no.
No, under the Mode C Veil, no. You said in the Bravo. You said this.
Oh,
okay,
sorry. Sorry.
my bad. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I thought you said you did.
Let's say I'm down here. I'm outside the Mode C Vale, right? Outside the
Yep.
Mode C Vale
Yep.
at 6,000 feet. What equipment do I need?
At 6,000 feet. No, you're in the Bravo. You need the transponder and transponder with the reporting altitude and two-way radio. 'Cause
Now,
if you're
am I in the Bravo
6,000
at 6,000 feet?
Yeah, because it's 75 to 75. No, I'm sorry. You're below the Bravo. I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah. So I'm below the Bravo, but you are correct. You do still need that equipment because it's not just within the Mode C Vale, it's also within the lateral boundaries of Bravo.
Okay.
All right. A lot of people miss that one, that it includes the lateral boundaries of Bravo.
Let's just say, for the sake of all the students out there, if you ever get yourself into that kind of an airspace without a radio or transponder, I would suggest take a gun and shoot yourself because you're
Well,
about to hit something.
that's not even that big of a deal because let's go here. This is where I did 90% of my training out of, right? I did 90% of my training out of here.
Okay.
All right. But there's this little airport right here, Casa Grande Municipal.
Okay.
It's an uncontrolled airport. There's a bunch of people there with like Pipers and Cubs and all this other jazz, right? No, ain't nothing really all that fancy going on there. But there's this little sliver of Bravo that sticks out outside the Mode C Vale, requiring you to have that piece of equipment, requiring you to have the ADSB out and the transponder with Mode C. But it wouldn't really be that unreasonable for somebody to make that mistake, right? If they took off from Casa Grande, look, the runway literally lines up, punching you into that, right?
Right.
Now, it's not, here's the thing, it's up at 8,000 feet and the field elevation is 1,400, right? You're not going to end up in it, without trying, but you could still end up underneath it and needing the equipment without having it. It's not.
Right. You're in the lateral boundaries. That's what you're saying.
Yep. So what is this blue 75?
So this is the maximum elevation figure or the lowest flight altitude to fly if you don't want to just navigate for how do you say, or without hitting anything on the ground.
Yep. So it's not necessarily the highest obstacle, because here's the highest obstacle, right? It gives you.
No, that's lower than this. If you're talking 7,500, that's 7148.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is it's not the highest obstacle. It is a clearance altitude. So if you were to maintain 7,500, you're going to clear the highest obstacle in this grid by
quadrant,
around 300 rounded up.
Yes.
Right. So I'm happy with that. Let's go to aviationweather.gov and we're going to look at some weather.
All right.
That's too easy.
What was it? I never even seen that one. IWA. What was it?
It's Indian. It's India Williams, or sorry, it's Williams Gateway. It's just outside of Phoenix.
Nah, never been there. Never seen that.
Yeah, most unless you trained with ASU or UND, you ain't been there.
No, you'd be surprised. But I flew to with one of my friends. I flew to Goodyear, and I think this is the longest cross country flight I did in a Cirrus. But he was flying. I wasn't. I was just riding along.
It was a much better ride than a Cherokee.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
what do we got?
Phoenix. I got the TAF pulled up for Phoenix, right?
Okay.
Can you tell me when to expect the strongest wind and what that wind would be?
Yeah, sure.
I know the wind's not very strong, but
I'm not, and that's at 0300.
Awesome. Let's go find a busier airport.
There you go. Now you got some serious stuff.
Yeah.
So this is for. So it's kind of like it's what we used to get here. Last few weeks in California, Southern California. So this one stands for KORD, which is O'Hare, I think,
Yep.
Illinois. On the 27th day at 1951 Zulu, the winds are 250 at 8, gusting 24. Wind direction changes from 230 to 290. 10 statute miles, scatter 3,900. Temperature 4 degrees plus, minus dew point -4. Altimeter 3006. Remarks coming from a station that can detect precipitation. And the last one is the actual temperature broken down to the digits.
Yep. All right. Awesome. When would be the lowest? Oh, well, there's only one ceiling. Never mind. All right. I'm happy with that. You know how to read those. Let's go here. What would you use this chart for?
So this is like an overview map. Sorry, I'm terrible with names, man.
No, I care less if you can name the chart. It's a Prague chart. I care less about
chart,
that.
Yeah. So
what I'm really curious about is like what kind of decisions would you make like off of this chart? Like long-term decisions, long-term, flight?
Yes. Yes. Since we're flying, high-speed Cherokees, you would do a long. You would look at this chart to make a go no go decision if you want to head on from California, let's say to Oregon or Washington or whatever. Upper East, I don't know what, Utah. And reason is because you want to look and check where all the high pressure, where all the low pressures, that'll give you probably either headwind or tailwind. Where is the precipitation, and where is the precipitation maybe at a certain, amount of time from that point and on. What pressure gradient controlling the area and how that's going to affect you. I think it's kind of like, again, it's an overview map.
Yep. Awesome. What are these lines?
So these are pressure gradient lines, or isobars, what we call them.
So we can see we got a lot of them real close together, as opposed to right here. It's pretty wide. What should I expect?
Yep, very good. So I'm saying not only they're very close, they're associated with a low. If this was a high pressure system, it would be anyway. So it's a low, meaning it's a counterclockwise rotation to begin with, which associate with very high wind. The closer the isobars are, the stronger the wind is. And I think if I'm right on that one, the wind is going to be perpendicular to the isobars. So that means in that mode, it would be this storm is actually headed southeast.
Awesome. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're telling me direction of the storm and all that jazz. That's awesome. All right.
Okay.
You went a whole lot deeper than I expected.
Okay. All right.
That is awesome. Most students, I mean, let's be honest, like they look at it and they're like, how does this impact me? Like this is showing the country. I'm not flying in the country. I'm flying in, my state.
One of the things I realized during this whole training, and again, I've had the time, so the time is on my side, but what I've realized is that people forget that these planes can only fly 5 hours, which is the endurance. In reality, you will not get over 3.5 hours. And in them 3.5 hours, if you get about 5 knots of headwind, you'll probably be covering maybe no more than 350 to 400 miles. That map you were just looking at is about 3,000 miles, even more. So that's about, you'll be covering 10% of this whole thing. Just need to put it into perspective.
Yep. And, when I was ferrying airplanes, yeah, I'd look at those things more often. But now that I'm like staying in my own area, like I'm not really digging into that. All right. What's the freezing level in Texas?
Bring this up a little more. Okay. Freezing levels in Texas for what, for which one?
Either of them. It's awesome that you noticed there's two. The farther north one.
Okay, the farther north one is 8,000, I think.
Yep. Southern one?
8,000 and 12,000, if I see it right. 12,000 on the lower portion?
12,000. Awesome. You know how to read those. Mm-hmm. No, we're not going to Alaska. Let's go here.
Okay.
All right.
All right, winds and temps, right? What is it?
What's the winds and temps here?
That's a good one. Winds and temps on this one. So the winds are from the 240 at 106 knots and minus 47 degrees Celsius.
Awesome. Awesome. Little bit of, just make sure yep, I'm not missing anything. A little bit of aeronautical decision making, then we'll probably call it a day.
Yeah, sure.
Let me pull up my notes, right?
Sure.
Did that. All right. What are your personal minimums?
I don't have any.
So that's not a good thing, right?
Wait. No, I got something better than that. Talking about the 3.5 hours endurance. Most of the flying I do would be in the area around my house. Let's say within 100 miles so far. So the idea is that first of all, I know the airports very well. I know the terrain very well, and I know at what conditions I will not even take off. So I'm pretty much, I follow the weather very, how do you say, very consistently. So I can tell you that if it, when it comes to personal minimum, it would only apply if I go outside my comfort zone, meaning the area I operate on. But as long as I'm within that 50, 70 miles around here, where I can just do a quick turnaround and come back, or, shift to Van Nuys, or just go down to Torrance, or because there's so many airports in the area. And there's always going to be one that's going to have better weather condition than the others. And after all that, again, if none of it falls into what I just said, then you have 3.5 more hours to fly anywhere you want east and land this beast. So that's why I really don't complicate myself with this whole, but I get where you're going with it.
Well, but you specifically said there are conditions I won't even try in.
Right.
And those would be?
Let's say if I look out my house and I see that there's fluffy clouds over my head that are about 2,000 feet, I won't even try it.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I have had canceled flights. I mean, study flights. How do you say? Practice flights because of that. I solos that I've been pushing, for weeks. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like any student that I've had, when we start extending kind of the training platform or the training, profile over an extended period of time, anything longer than 6 months, we revisit personal minimums about every 6 months and have them write new ones down and talk about why the personal minimums that you had 6 months ago don't apply anymore and what we've learned or what risk mitigation strategies we've implemented to quantify the reduction of our minimums, right? Like me personally, when I was flying around as a pilot for UND, I didn't care day, night, what have you, as long as it wasn't thunderstorms and 40-mile-an-hour winds, I'm fine. Now that I've got thousands of hours and have flown over 20 different airplanes, I don't fly single engine at night. All right. Personal minimums change as you develop. Okay. And having them written down verifies that you're going to really abide by them. I know ForeFlight and Garmin Pilot, they both have personal minimum kind of functions in the app. And if you get a weather briefing and the weather exceeds those minimums, it'll warn you saying, hey, evaluate on whether or not you're going to go fly. And I know it feels weird because you're like, I've got hundreds of, I've got all this time. I've been flying, doing all this stuff. I've learned so much. I should just be able to use my judgment by looking outside. The problem with just using my judgment in the moment is there is nothing to really reference from a previous time. Like, hey, I set these minimums. This is where I was at those minimums. Am I doing better or am I doing worse from when I set these? And that's my 2 cents on it, is that it can feel like your judgment is great until you start to push yourself beyond. Like the example I used when me and my wife first started dating, we went on we took an airplane somewhere up to the Grand Canyon. Actually, there's a little dirt strip over near a portion of the Grand Canyon, but it's completely outside of cell service, so it was impossible for us to get a weather briefing. Normally, I would go, I'm not doing that. I'm not going somewhere where I'm not going to even be able to get a weather briefing. Not happening. But as soon as a cute girl was involved, I was like, that's probably okay. We picked up ice on the way back. We picked up ice on the airplane on the way back, and we had to make an emergency diversion and an ILS into a different airport.
Wow.
Now, you see why I have them written down? Because again, if I was to try that now, I'd be like, no, like you're cute and all, but maybe no.
No, yeah. I'm definitely. You should stick it on the dashboard, if I may say. Just forget.
I'd have my students take a picture of it and put it as their phone screen when they set their personal minimums, right? And everyone always thinks about weather when it comes to personal minimums. Think about length of flight, how long you've been flying. Like if I just got out of a 5-hour flight, or a 4-hour, what have you flight, do I really need to go for another 2 hours? No, right? So don't just think about weather when it comes to personal minimums.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. You're right. Definitely, there's many points in there.
Yep. Now, some pretty basic questions. Alcohol. What's the limitation for alcohol?
0.04, 8 hours bottle to throttle.
All right. Let's say you're hungover. Are you good?
Nope.
Nope. All right.
Hangover is still another form of not being, how do you say, being not fit to fly.
Or under the influence, right? Being hungover still counts as being under the influence, because let's just be honest, alcohol just borrows happiness from tomorrow. Okay. Well, in the event of a hangover.
I don't think so. I'm good.
So what's the required usage of oxygen?
So if you're staying at altitude more than 12,500 for more than 30 minutes, between 12,500 and 14,000 for more than 30 minutes, then you need to use, for the period of that time, you need to use oxygen. If you're above 14,000 cabin altitude, but no higher than 15,000, then you need to use it, constantly, from the, all the time. And at 15,000, all passengers and crew must have it, must have supplemental oxygen, but you can't force the passengers to use it. The crew must have it.
Yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right?
Yep.
And we already talked about hypoxia. So what questions do you have for me?
Am I ready?
Yeah, I'd say you're pretty, you're pretty good. The only thing you missed in the way of like systems was what the fuel primer specifically does. That was the only thing that, we had to really correct. But no, I'd say in the way of knowledge, you're right where you should belong, or you're right where you belong. 91.213, go read it. Right. Because when I asked like, hey, what else is 91.213 telling us to check? Right. And I know we can look it up whenever we need to, but
yeah,
knowing those things is a pretty good idea, right?
I learned that, and it's going to sound funny, but if you want to know something that's going to stick, that's going to stay, you have to relate it to an actual life experience. Otherwise, it's just like reading a book that has no meaning.
Yep.
The minute you close the book, you forget it. So, and that's why, and I won't lie to you, I barely look at regs. I only started looking at regs, I think, in the last 2 months. So it's kind of like, it's building up.
Yep.
But I'm going, every time I'm shifting to the page I need, and it'll come.
And that's the best way to do it, is to implement these regs into your day-to-day life. Okay. Even if like just based on the stuff that you've remembered, you've looked up, you've learned over the times, right? Go reference it. Right. If you come up to the airplane and something's broken, and be like, oh, well, I know I'm airworthy because I know that I don't need that item, but let me go find the reg that specifically says that.
And that's exactly what happened this morning.
Yep. So
I was going to fly a plane. I did the pre-trip. I found out the landing light isn't working and the stall horn isn't working. But the stall horn isn't needed at, per 91.205, but the landing light is.
Yes, because the aircraft's being used for hire.
Exactly. And I went back to the school and I'm like, I can't use it.
Yep.
Have to
Now,
quit flying.
if it's your personal airplane, do you need a landing light?
No,
No, I don't have one. It burns out all the time, so I never
no,
replace it.
yeah. So again, as long as it's not being used commercially or for hire, it's not needed by many of these regulations.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, I'd say knowledge portion, you're right where you belong. You should be just fine when it comes to the knowledge portion of your check ride. Like
All
if you were
right,
my
that's good to
student,
hear, man.
we'd go and do the flight.
I appreciate that.
So, all right. Well,
I take it very seriously from you. I take it very much,
yeah, because I mean, if you ask a bunch of my students, they'll tell you I'm a dick, but they always pass their check rides, so I can't be that bad.
I like that. Yeah, you do your job and they do theirs, and that's the way it goes. Right? That's
All
the way-
right. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Adrian, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
No
Really love
problem.
that. Just a word out of this whole thing. I really think you're doing a great work for the community with what you're doing. I think I'll be even more open. I think grinding the students on this, because it's more of a grinding thing. You go on subject and you grind it all the way, just like to extract whatever is in their head, and I think that's what should be done. And I think you're doing a big favor to the community, man.
Well, I do my best. I appreciate it.
Hopefully this will help you promote your channel as well. And we'll see you again probably in the future.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, man.
Bye.
Take it easy, man. Bye.